mean, I don't know why it's got to start like this. Like, I don't know why you gotta be gunning for me like this, TJ. Happy Saturday night to everybody. Welcome back to John's Comics with Kids, and another one of the movie streams that I and my friend Dan from Comic Chop News have been doing of late. And here he is. What's up, Dan?
Hello. I feel like TJ disrespect you just a little bit.
There's some of that. There's some of that happening there. I was trying to eat a little something before we went live because I've been at a soccer game all day, and it was fun. It was a good game. Charlie won 1-0. She was the goalie, and so if she'd let anything in, it would have been a different game. They did okay. But welcome to another one-off. Dan had a great idea for a discussion centered around blank check movies, movies where, for one reason or another, the film was allowed to be made almost like with one person's vision, where they basically could do whatever they want, whether that person was an actor or a director, what have you. The film represents this individual getting a blank check to just make their movie. Now, some filmmakers have had this a long time in their career. Some actors have been going strong. I don't know that a lot of people say no to Tom Cruise anymore. But at the same time, there are some individuals who really epitomize the blank check filmmaker. And then we're going to get into some of those people. But let's say hello to some awesome folks in the chat, because we did have TJ tailgating early, making joke early. I appreciate it. We got another movie friend, Perry, in the chat. What's going on, Perry? And we got the former champion of the hunt, now ousted by the king himself. We're getting a rematch this coming Friday, so be prepared for the Johns from California throwing down again this coming Friday on the hunt. Thank you for coming by, John. I appreciate you, sir. So I got to ask before we get into like examples, because there's a bunch of them. What's up, Schultze? What was it? What was the impetus for you? Because you came up with this idea. I was just curious what launched you down this rabbit hole.
So I'll be honest, there is a podcast called Blank Check. And it's by two comedians, Griffin and David.
Okay.
And each podcast will have stars and comedians come on, and they will do a month worth of that director, movie by movie by movie.
Okay. So they
started talking about it, and then I was like, well,
I want clarity. Like, so they have somebody come on their show and they watch all that person's movies.
Yes, for the whole month.
So how does Blank Check play into that show?
So basically, this is the elevator pitch of it. It's a film podcast following the career output of directors who had significant success and that are then offered a figurative blank check to pursue their passion projects. All the episodes focus on a single movie of that director's filmography, and the show is grouped into miniseries.
Okay, because it seems like some of the movies wouldn't qualify to the term blank check like we're using it. If they go
but they're going by the directors, so they'll go by to get them to the point where they got the blank check.
Gotcha. Now I understand. What is up, Nigel from Desired Comics? Good to see you in the chat. What is going on, Marcus from Circumstances? Good to see you. Frankie Muniz.
That comes up a lot if you Google it.
That's a different thing. That's not what we're talking about. I loved the movie Blank Check as a kid. You guys are hilarious.
I've never watched it.
So for me, I instantly rattled through a bunch of different movies in my head, and almost all of them were from the same filmmakers who basically achieved a status level and then kept propagating that opportunity to have a blank check. So I chose Avatar for the thumbnail because really, who says no to James Cameron post Titanic? Like,
so I had a different movie for James Cameron, and this was post Terminator 2.
Okay.
Which was a gigantic movie. For those who don't remember,
it was a big hit. Yeah.
The Abyss. That movie is ponderous, boring, got some good acting, but it's so overly long. But who was going to say no to James Cameron? Where he's like, I've got an idea. It's underwater. It's aliens made of water. And people are going to be able to breathe water. And it's the first of his, I really want to be underwater a lot.
Now I like the Abyss. I don't have anything against the Abyss.
So
I don't even think it's slow. I don't even think
the first version I watched was the director's cut.
Okay.
And it was 3.5 hours, or at least it felt like it. It just, so you come off an action movie like Terminator, and then
it's definitely
Abyss
not like
comes
Terminator.
out.
Yeah.
Pink water. Thank you, Kelly Comics.
Pink water. Yeah. With the rat, they drown the rat in it. Yep.
Avatar is borrowed Fern Gully. It's Pocahontas.
It's
called Jake Sully, John Smith.
Dances with Wolves. Last
Cats.
Samurai. I do agree that Avatar story wise is incredibly simple. I'm not a big Avatar fan. I like Abyss a lot more.
Oh, but yeah, I watched Avatar once and never want to watch it again.
What I felt like was he has achieved a status level where no one says no. And I didn't necessarily feel like the blank check was a negative, but then you started running through your list of blank check people in movies, and I was like, okay, this does seem like a really dangerous road where there's a lot of bad movies in this well.
So one of the examples I have of the hubris that could go wrong. So during the late 70s, there was this director, Michael Cimino, did a lot of great movies.
Deer Hunter.
Yes.
Was his big celebratory hit that led him to
put this ponderous
options.
Movie out called Heaven's Gate.
Yeah.
This movie basically fucked him out of the industry.
I mean, yeah.
It literally, like, it was a money sink. Like, had it come out in the media that Waterworld had come out in, which for all those of us who are alive, remember that movie, there wasn't a day that went by that they didn't make a joke about how over budget.
Yeah. I mean, Waterworld was like Apocalypse When. Like, there was all these jokes about, like, when will this movie ever get released? What's going on with it? Okay, so we're talking then about it's not necessarily a bad thing to be a blank check movie, but that usually a creative collaborative medium like film does not do well when one person just gets to do whatever they want and it's their ego running the show. Is that the thesis statement for you when it comes to blank check?
It can go good and it could go bad. And usually there's examples when it runs wild that same person can have a magnificent movie,
right,
and a really terrible one. There is a director. I wanted to get your take on this because I couldn't figure out if they're a blank check guy or not.
Okay.
Robert Rodriguez, because he kind of does his own thing. They let him do it, but he also does it on the cheap where it's not dangerous.
Yeah, I think the question of, and maybe it's a real subtle difference between an auteur and a blank check filmmaker. You know what I mean? Like, there's, you look at like the French New Wave filmmakers, and those are very like, I'm making my movie my way. Nobody's second guessing me. Nobody's editing me later. But were they ego-driven blank check movies, or were they working within a budget? Blank check for me feels like nobody says no. And when they're like, I need a dinosaur in this, I get the dinosaur. You know what I mean? So Rodriguez and the French New Wave would be disqualified. And it's less about an auteur, and it's maybe more about ego run amok.
And then there's the auteur that gets the blank check, makes the movie, and everybody goes, no.
Yeah.
So Ang Lee, remember, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, everybody loved him.
Yeah.
Handed him the Incredible Hulk, and they're like, what the fuck did he just do? Then Brokeback Mountain.
I don't know that I would call the Hulk a blank check movie, because there's no way he was able to do whatever he wanted, because clearly there were people forcing him to do certain things story-wise or plot-wise that he probably wasn't excited about. And the movie, he was definitely getting a lot of his say-so, but it doesn't feel like an example of blank check to me. It definitely feels like a studio-made movie.
Because then you have like Kurosawa, who in America never would have,
No.
but in Asia could do whatever the fuck he wanted.
Right. It's an interesting. So the blank check thing is interesting. So I threw Avatar on here. I also threw two other filmmakers on here who I feel like are blank check filmmakers, but they're on that line of are they an auteur? So you have a movie like The Irishman. I don't know many filmmakers who'd get a chance to basically make like an 8-hour, whatever the stupid Irishman movie was, 6-hour movie, and just be like, you can put whoever you want in it, do whatever you want, make it as long as you want. We're not going to cut it. You mentioned the word ponderous. Holy crap.
Oh, yes.
Holy crap, this movie. I mean, there were websites dedicated to telling you when you could pause it and go and get a nap and come back later to try to finish The Irishman. So this was, for me, and I was struggling between Irishman and Casino, examples of Scorsese run amok.
So Last Temptation of Christ was my Scorsese movie.
Oh, really?
He got humbled.
I mean,
and then went back to doing Goodfellas and, Scorsese on Coke Crime. Because listen, as soon as you get Willem Dafoe as Christ, like, nothing good's gonna happen.
Wow, I thought it was a bold choice.
Oh no, it's a bold choice, but there's gonna be pushback because they're like, whoa. And I remember there was protests about that movie.
Oh yeah.
And Scorsese, he has a wheelhouse.
Yeah.
And when he diverts from that wheelhouse, except for Wolf of Wall Street. I mean, it's still in that wheelhouse, but it's not. I am actually excited to see that new one with Leonardo DiCaprio and De Niro in it. The Red Woman.
I don't know it. I haven't heard about it yet. I'm not a Scorsese fan, which is kind of why I enjoyed putting him on this list, because I do feel like
he's in his movies, even if the movie's not great.
Yeah.
The movie that I think gets shit on the most is what's the one with Robert De Niro playing Rupert Pupkin, the failed comedian.
Oh, the Last King of Comedy, King of Comedy.
Yes, the King of Comedy.
Yeah.
And it's such a off the wall movie for him,
right?
That I appreciate it because it's different.
For me, the only Scorsese, well, I guess I own The Departed, but that's more because I like Infernal Affairs from Hong Kong. The one that I love of his the most is only because I love Paul Newman is The Color of Money, and it really is a beautiful sequel to The Hustler, which is a phenomenal Paul Newman movie as well.
If you don't remember, had a soundtrack, because we talked about this. There's a certain period of time where you hear a song and you start going, I remember that movie.
The Werewolves of London.
His hair
was perfect.
Yes.
So for me, like, the movies I like by Scorsese the most are usually the ones that are least Scorsese. But it's the same with Woody Allen. Woody Allen a blank check filmmaker where he just basically gets the budget that he wants and he just goes and makes his movie.
Yes. No one says no to him because they know it'll either
he'll marry their daughters.
That too.
No, I'm just joking. He marries his own daughters.
One of the most glaring, in my opinion, blank check guys is George Lucas.
Sure.
And he will write his own check if he has to, as he proved.
Yeah. The obviously the prequel Star Wars movies are examples of that, right?
Yeah.
Phantom Menace is a blank check movie, right?
Yes, 100%. That is him having this grand design and society going, no. But kids of an age love those movies.
There are still people that absolutely love it, and it's among those movies are among their favorite Star Wars movies. It's a generational thing that I'm not quick to scoff at people who love it, but I think it's an example of a filmmaker who had nobody saying no. Now, I want to raise an interesting person in this debate, because I don't think this person qualifies, but they could at any point. But they've chosen not to fall into this trap, and that's Spielberg.
The closest I could come to him, AI.
I mean, ultimately, I would argue that that's him trying to do something for Kubrick and he was really doing it for somebody else. But he's somebody that I hear time and again stories about how he puts hurdles in his own way so that he can't just do whatever he wants. He makes challenges for himself, whether it's shooting in black and white for Schindler's List, or whether it's not using anything but steady cams all the way through Saving Private Ryan, or whatever it is. He sets challenges for himself to make the task of creativity difficult, so that he's not just getting people saying yes to him all the time, and he's forced to have to figure out creative solutions that serve a story.
So famously, one of the things that'll make me love Spielberg forever, if you ever watched the making of The Crystal Skull.
Okay.
Lucas is on set trying to do rewrites. And Spielberg's like, I don't think that's a good idea, George. I don't think that's a good... I'll tell you what, I'll give you this one thing, but we're not putting this in. And like, Lucas is so defeated. He's like, okay, Steven. And it's interesting to me because, like, I just love the fact that he's saying no. And Indiana Jones was always kind of like a Holocaust revenge movie.
I mean, right?
It sort of is. It's kind of like
the first and the third one, absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Shout out to Kenneth Bird in the chat. What's going on, Kenneth? Schultze's asking about Peter Jackson.
Yes.
As far as somebody who clearly had to battle his way through his 3 films, but then was given a blank check to make 3 unnecessary Hobbit movies that really all are flawed fundamentally to me. That's a great example. I totally agree with. Now here, I'm going to throw out the one that I thought of today. And I said to you earlier before we went live, I thought of somebody, and it pains me to mention this person because as an actor, as a producer, as a director, I really like this filmmaker. I really like this person. But they're definitely an example of somebody who fell into this trap. And that is Kevin Costner.
So there's been good, there's been bad.
I mean, he obviously worked his butt off, paid it for it himself, spent all of his own money to make Dances with Wolves work, and it was this mega hit. And then he got a blank check for The Postman, and it was an absolute crime of cinema.
I still think it was better than Waterworld.
I definitely don't believe that that's possible.
But then he did that baseball movie where he was the aging player.
For Love of the Game.
For Love of the Game. Fucking great movie.
That's Sam Raimi.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I lost you.
It wasn't. I was trying to get my thoughts together because Sam Raimi, I can't tell if he's a blank check guy because
I mean, maybe with Spider-Man 3.
I think he plays nice, but
I would argue that that's no, because they forced Venom on him and he couldn't even make the movie he wanted. They made him
The Great and Mighty. That's the one.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, if Sam Raimi was a blank check filmmaker, it would have been Spider-Man 3. It would have been this opportunity where he'd had 2 mega successes. He should have forced the studio and said, no, look, I got a track record. We're doing it right. Don't fuck with this. Let me make my 3rd movie, and then we'll see how it goes. But they forced Venom on him, and it became what it became. And so in the end, it was not the blank check. He couldn't get the blank check.
The most brilliant casting, the J. Jonah Jameson in the Spider-Man movies is perfect. J.K. Simmons is perfect.
He's so good that they won't let him go. They won't let him stop. Yeah. Schultze says, I could see your wheels turning when you looked at For Love of the Game this morning. It's true. What is up, Kevin from Entropy and Comics? Good to see you, Kev. I hope you're doing well, my man. So that was the one I thought of, and I do really like Costner as a filmmaker. I love Open Range is a phenomenally underrated Western that he directed and starred in and was just phenomenal. But I mean, it's him and Robert Duvall and Annette Bening, so it's just obviously top tier right there.
And then there's that Wyatt Earp movie he was in after Tombstone because everybody wanted to see that.
Right. And it's hard to know if that was Kevin Costner's blank check or if that was Lawrence Kasdan's blank check. You know?
Oh, yeah, Kasdan did have kind of pull at that time. This
But it's hard to
one,
know because it definitely is an example of a filmmaker and an actor who didn't see eye to eye on what they were trying to do. You know?
Very, very much so.
What's up, Chris?
Hey, Chris. The Wachowskis. Or Wachowskis.
I mean, obviously they fought tooth and nail and got their Matrix film made, and then they got a blank check for now 3 more Matrix films.
And then they did Jupiter Ascending.
The question is, were the other Matrix films? I think those were the blank checks. Matrix 2, Matrix 3.
Especially 3.
I mean, and they're disasters because I think nobody was questioning the stupid plot twists and devices in those movies. They just make no sense and they don't hold up.
And then there was
crumble.
Oh, I forget who I think it might have been the Wachowskis in that fucking horrible movie with
Cloud Atlas.
Was that them?
I thought that was them. At least they wrote it, I want to say, and then it was directed maybe by the V for Vendetta guy, who was also one of their crew. I thought Cloud Atlas was them, but maybe I'm wrong. I mentioned Kubrick on here as well, and obviously that's a tricky one because he was definitely a visionary filmmaker.
Speed Racer,
who didn't compromise on his vision. However, did he get blank checks to just make the movies that he wanted to make the way he wanted? It's tricky, and I chose Eyes Wide Shut because that's the combination of an actor who gets whatever they want and a filmmaker who seems to get whatever they want making a movie. And you can decide if it's a success or not. I can't stand most of Kubrick's movies, so it's definitely on the low end for me.
Just for what he got away with, what he did to Stephen King during the production of Shining, and what he did to Shelley Duvall.
Oh my God!
Read up on that.
Here's a good interesting question. Then, when we're talking about these filmmakers who are auteurs or get whatever they want, why do they always want to torture their leading ladies? What is that about?
They'll get a better performance out of them. I think that's
because that's the hit. You look at Hitchcock, John Ford. You look at Kubrick. You look at James Cameron. These guys are notorious for basically traumatizing the women in their movies to make great cinema, which is clearly a psychological scar in them somehow, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. Shelley Duvall did not act for a while after doing that movie.
And you hear the horror stories of what Hitchcock did to the ladies in all of his movies. I mean, Vertigo is basically his autobiography. He's basically just describing how he traumatizes women by having James Stewart do it for 2 hours.
This one's gonna. So this one's for Carlito. Is Christopher Nolan a blank check guy? Because during the Batman movies, he had it in his thing of, I'm going to do this Batman movie, but in the year in between, we do one of mine.
Yeah.
So he had the power.
And was that the Prestige?
Prestige was the first one after, then Inception.
Okay. I do feel like he has become somebody that writes their own check now. And you can't say no to whatever it is he's going to do. Even on the marketing side, he seems to be in charge of how they market his movies, which is a sign of a blank check.
Cuts his own trailers.
So I think there's an interesting comment there. When did he get that, and how often has he had it? Is interesting.
Right after Begins,
because I don't even know that Begins was big enough a hit, but after Dark Knight, I don't know.
In particular, after Inception hit big, I think.
It was done Dark Knight. At that point. Yeah.
Schulte's got a good one. Is Titanic a blank check movie?
It's tricky.
So that was a disastrous production.
It was kind of like Jaws in that, that everybody thought this was going to be an absolute failure. And he was definitely playing with fire, and the studio frustrated with him. I don't know how that works.
So basically, I do remember because I listened to Jeff Loeb on Kevin Smith's podcast, and he was commissioned to make a movie for possible action star Howie Long. And it was the one that he was the firefighter / action hero.
Okay.
I can't remember what the hell the name of the movie was.
Sounds like a winner already.
But Jeff Loeb had written Commando.
Mm-hmm.
So he had a history of
those kind of movies. Yeah.
The movie with Howie Long was in theaters for a week, and then Titanic just kept making the same amount of money.
Yep.
Every weekend.
Yep.
And it did not drop. There was no drop for 32 weeks.
Yep.
Which is insane. Until, what was it, Avengers Endgame that finally took it down?
I can't even remember. Oh, you mean like beat it out? Yeah, it might have been.
Yeah.
So there is this element of a progressive budget. Obviously, movies like Apocalypse Now and Jaws would fall into that category of movies that started at a certain place and it just ballooned out of control.
And please,
is that a comment on being a blank check, or is it a studio just agreeing that they need to finish a movie? You know, it's tricky if that's not. Is it a blank check or is it not? You know,
famously, Empire Strikes Back was running over budget, and what happened was that George Lucas decided, fuck it, I'll take out a personal loan to handle the rest, and he gave up his points on the movie, which big deal, but he owned all of the toy and licensing.
Yeah.
So it worked out for him.
Sure. Yeah. And it's hard to determine, does that make it a blank check, or does that mean they're just trying to finish the movie? Because there's a big difference, right? I feel like between those two things.
That was with a studio putting their foot down, saying no more.
So
money.
like for me, a blank check film would be Vanilla Sky, where you basically have Cruise and Cameron Crowe coming off of Jerry Maguire, this huge hit, Academy Award nominations. Tom has his mind set on this foreign film that he's seen. His new girlfriend's, Penelope Cruz, she's in it. We got to bring her on board.
And Jason Lee.
And nobody is saying no, right? Nobody is telling them this isn't working. I mean, the original film is very good, but it's an indie. Yeah. It does not need a budget like they're using here. It does not need the special effects or any of these things. The digital, sunsets are not needed. So what you end up with, I think, is a movie that has a budget it does not need, just to cover the fact that nobody says no to Tom Cruise and Cameron Crowe after they made Jerry Maguire. Right?
Like we also have Affleck and J-Lo when they made Geely.
Jesus.
Vanilla Ice, they gave him Cool as Ice.
You're just gonna run through your don't blow your wad. We got we're only 28 minutes in here.
Like Adam Sandler, his movies make money. They're terrible, but they make money.
Yes, let's talk a little Adam Sandler. I want to say hello to Gore though.
Hey.
I don't hate Eyes Wide Shut, but it does fall into the majority of Kubrick for me, which is movies that I can tolerate, but probably never want to watch again. There's only a handful of Kubrick movies like Strange Love or Paths of Glory that I really am like, oh, I'll watch that a third or fourth time. I'm never going to watch Eyes Wide Shut again. I mean,
what makes it interesting to me is the fact you're seeing a marriage fall apart in the background.
I mean, it's kind of, it's like that. So we got Adam. You mentioned Adam Sandler, and we had discussed this in our private chats, where it basically is a guy who had massive success, Waterboy, Happy Gilmore, and then started basically crafting movies with a very specific budgetary design that would cover all of the people that were the friends of the filmmakers, right? The director, Adam and his cronies, they would go to some exotic location where they were wanting to shoot something, Hawaii or whatever, and they'd vacation for a few months making a movie. And the script would be rewritten while they shoot it, and they would stick to a basic budget. But then it was like, I do agree he's a blank check actor producer, because basically what he's doing now is saying, look, here's the synopsis of my story. Here's the basic idea. Write me a check for this amount and I will give you this movie. And he's now doing it for Netflix, where he's like, they know the budget for each of his movies is going to be this dollar. They know that he's got this idea, and he's going to produce something that will be a hit, because his movies at that price point are big hits. Is that how you see it?
Very much so, because, and again, like, he keeps the budget down just enough that it's tolerable.
I mean, you
I
hear
would put
from
him
Netflix.
I would put him in the John Carpenter category of you hire him, you know he can work under a budget,
right?
Work cheap. He will score his own music.
Yep.
And then when you give him way too much money, you end up with Escape from LA.
So, like, I just feel like he's a guy that's an example, and maybe, what's the guy? No crud. He took over for Morgan Freeman in the Kiss the Girls movies.
Oh, Medea, the movies.
Yeah, the Medea film.
Yeah.
The actor, writer, producer, director.
Yes.
He's the same in the sense that he basically, I think, writes his own check and says, this is what the movie's going to cost. It's going to pay for everything I need. Leave me alone, and I'll produce a product that will sell. And it's an example, I think, of success. Now, whether you don't like Adam Sandler or not is beside the point, right? Whether you don't like the Medea films is beside the point. Are they successful as blank check filmmakers? And I think they both are. Netflix seems over the moon with how his movies do on their platform, and how popular they are and how much they make from his films. So in that way,
Tyler Perry,
thank you. Compared to somebody like Kevin Costner making The Postman, these are examples of successful filmmakers who've got it down to something of a science. You could even throw a Clint Eastwood in the later part of his life into the same category as, like, he's going to show up. I got all my people. I'll cast. I'll make this movie. I'll write the music, like you say. Give me this budget, and we'll give you a movie. And maybe it'll win an Oscar for Best Picture, or maybe it'll be, a movie where he's the drug mule or whatever.
Gore has Marlon Brando had a blank check as an actor.
He was a blank check actor. I don't know if he ever
he had the star power.
I don't know if he have strong-armed a movie. I know he certainly played havoc with movies like Island of Dr. Moreau, but I don't know that he ever took over a movie and made it his vision, right?
I wouldn't say that. I just know he strong-armed the Superman, the producers.
Donner, yeah.
No, not Donner, but the Ilya and the people from Canon Films, because he basically told them, I don't believe your checks will clear, so I want to be paid in gold.
Yikes.
They paid his salary in pure gold because he did not believe that their checks would clear.
I would say this, Gore, for what he's trying to do, Adam Sandler is a success. And I don't necessarily love his movies, and there's plenty of his movies that I think are boring, unfunny, problematic, whatever. But there are also some of his that I think, like I mentioned, Happy Gilmore and The Waterboy, that I think are just fun. And he's good at making a certain kind of movie, making it for a budget, and having it be a success. And that's interesting. I found that interesting because in this discussion, I think a lot of the movies that Dan and I talked about were like bombs, like catastrophic failures. But you look at somebody like Adam Sandler or Tyler Perry, and you're getting an example of somebody who makes it work, and makes it work big time.
This is like in the weird category of that M. Night Shyamalan.
He certainly had a blank check after Sixth Sense,
but then he came back with Glass and Split and all that.
I think Signs, upped the ante for him a little bit, and then you got that Lady in the Water movie, and I think he just crashed hard.
But now he's doing all those Netflix shows, and then that one for Apple TV. So I think he might have found his
niche.
Yeah, where they're like, here's your budget. This is what, because it seems like he keep pumping out one thing after another.
Right.
There is somebody
No,
who's
Brando
oh,
was known for the on-set shenanigans. I know that Richard Donner told stories all the time of Brando saying, "Couldn't I just be a hologram for the whole movie? Couldn't I just sit in my trailer and you shoot me with a, with a drape behind me and we just do the whole movie that way?" And he was definitely and I heard obviously the horror stories are easy to glamorize and make it seem like this guy was just a complete dick, but I heard it spun another way by a few different people. That the idea was he was somebody that loved to work on a movie with somebody who had a clear vision of what they wanted. So he was testing, right? He was testing people to see were they a limp noodle or were they actually made of something stronger? And did they have a genuine vision for what they were making? And so I think later in his career, it was probably more interesting to him to toy with productions because it was a chance to see how serious these filmmakers were about the thing they were making.
and sometimes you break the director, like what happened with Coppola on Apocalypse Now, where he went native.
Or
And
you talk about the guy, they replaced Friedkin on Island of Dr. Moreau, right? Frankenheimer, or one of those guys had to leave and the other one came in to finish it because it was like that bad. With obviously you throw in a Val Kilmer going through a divorce and it's just going to get worse.
and then midway through starts imitating Marlon Brando.
Yeah. And David Thewlis was just like, I don't know what we're making today. I'm just going to show up.
If for anybody who really wants to see the insanity of William Friedkin, there is a series of interviews with him interviewing other filmmakers. And there is one in particular of the director who did Drive, Nicholas Winding Refn, where Rifkin just rips into him and he goes, and he's like, "Well, what do you think of yourself?" He's like, "I think I'm brilliant. I mean, Drive, everybody loved it. I'm doing Neon Demon." And Freaky goes, "It's a bunch of bullshit's what it is." And just starts ripping into him. He goes, "Your movies are bullshit. If you didn't have that pretty boy in Drive, it'd be a piece of shit." And just
I don't
apparently
disagree.
everybody gets that.
I don't disagree because I didn't like Drive. I thought Drive was boring as hell. I was bored with Drive. I didn't think it was interesting at all. I'd seen that story told way better many other times. But people loved it, so I'm clearly wrong. I want to make this point way in advance. I firmly believe any opinion, any comments about there's no such thing as an objective opinion. It doesn't exist. So a movie is not, even a movie like The Postman cannot be objectively bad. It can be bad, but it's not objective. There's no objectivity to any of it. What's up, Signature King? How you doing, fellow nerd? Here's a guy. So in the background of the thumbnail here, it's one of the odd, unusual posters for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, because I would count Quentin Tarantino, certainly in this part of his life, as a blank check filmmaker, which is why you get awful movies like The Hateful Eight. I just think nobody knows how to say no to Quentin Tarantino anymore. And he just does do whatever the heck he wants. Speaking way too kindly of Sandler, his stupid movies are single-handedly ruining some comedy. I mean, I'm not saying I love them. I'm saying they're successful. And you on a level of financial success,
people don't say no to him.
He is able to continue to be a blank. Some filmmakers can only get one blank check in their career, and then the rest of their life is trying to recover from how badly that goes. You talk about Michael Cimino earlier. I think Adam Sandler is an interesting example of somebody who continues to get a blank check because it's working somehow. And Tyler Perry, same way. I don't know that I've only seen about 2 Tyler Perry movies in my life, but the guy can't stop being successful.
He has an audience. He does it on the cheap, and it makes money.
Right?
It's a good formula.
I don't particularly like Adam Sandler. I don't particularly love any of his movies. There's a couple that I watch, like I mentioned, Happy Gilmore and 50 First Dates is the one that I really enjoy. But like for the most part, I don't care for it. Not a big fan. But let's talk Quentin, because obviously Quentin had Reservoir Dogs, this indie hit. He had been writing screenplays and kind of gotten notoriety for his Natural Born Killers and True Romances and his rewrites on things like Crimson Tide. And then he makes Pulp Fiction. He gets this huge movie. And You could argue that after Pulp Fiction, he had a lot of blank checks, to lesser or greater success along the way. I don't know that Jackie Brown, his next movie, was a blank check movie.
No.
He went the other way, where he basically made his next movie much smaller, much more intimate, and not the big budget bonanza that maybe Kill Bill was.
He came very close to writing Halloween 6.
Well, and
he had a script.
I hear he kept trying to argue with the Broccoli family to do a James Bond movie.
So, God, this is gonna be.
But I want to hear your thoughts on Quentin first. I want to hear your thoughts on Quentin. Is he a blank check filmmaker?
I think Kill Bill might have been his bigger blank check movie that gave him more because
it succeeded.
It was a surprise. Mm-hmm. He had not been doing great. That movie came out and like the world stopped because Uma Thurman, it's a revenge movie. It's using, this Asian revenge cinema, basically.
And another filmmaker who was notorious for traumatizing his female actresses in his movies.
Yes.
I mean, Uma Thurman still speaks with venom about him.
So I would say part 1 I thought was pretty tight. Part 2 I feel is when the hubris starts coming, because that fucking movie feels like it's never gonna end.
So that's a comment I think you've been making a couple times. This idea of very long, that blank check movies can become incredibly long. They can become incredibly ponderous, right? Is that a qualifier for your typical blank check movies? Like, obviously Postman
not
qualifies.
Really, but I feel you can feel the ego coming out in it.
Right.
And that's where I feel like when the director starts just injecting themselves far too much into the movie, there's so much more of him in that movie.
It's my party. I'll do what I want.
Yeah, like as soon as you see Michael Madsen for like what feels like an hour at the beginning of the movie, I already know. And then fucking Inglourious Bastards is a whole other. And Hateful Eight is the most bloated movie that didn't need to be. And it was like
that's his worst movie for me personally. I think Hateful Eight is an absolute disaster of a movie, and
also the release time, because how many other westerns came out at that same time? Because there was the Magnificent Seven remake, that came out right about that time. Bone Tomahawk, which
was better than all of them. Water. Yeah.
And for people who haven't seen Bone Tomahawk, I will argue with it. It's a horror movie.
It is absolutely a horror movie, yeah. Tarantino makes the movies he wants to make, and that's my impression. Young people love his films. I can't get beyond the campiness. For me, it's less about the campiness, but I do understand the heavy genre tropes that he falls into. For me, the issue seems to be he's at a stage in his career, and this is where the line between blank check and auteur seems to blur for me. But he's at a stage in his career where nobody says no to him, and he's basically just running wild, and you end up with these movies that have incredibly strong performances, really interesting scenes, but don't add up to anything, and he feels like he's spinning his wheels. So you look at somebody like Scorsese or Woody Allen or Tarantino, and I think you just see somebody who is in repeat mode over and over again, and they're not being told no, and so I think you end up with some very ponderous product.
The greatest thing I ever heard was that story from Fiona Apple that she quit doing cocaine after being locked in a room with him and Paul Thomas Anderson, coked out of their minds. And I just imagine, look, man, this is what I'm talking about. And I really want Pulp Fiction to be remade, because I posted that SNL skit where it was Norm Macdonald playing Burt Reynolds as the Vincent Vega role. And I'm picturing in my head him doing it. What are you talking about here? Is this all about burgers? There is a line though in Once Upon a Time.
So my second least favorite Tarantino movie is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I do think it's an absolute mess of a movie.
Oh, it's a mess. There's one line that I love the delivery by
Leo or Brad?
Leo, where he goes, "Listen, man, I don't want to make any shitty Italian westerns." And during this time of that decade, there was shitty Italian westerns constantly.
Yeah.
So it was just a little thing they added.
The only watchable part of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was just Brad Pitt, who is really good and just gorgeous. It's yet another movie where I spend my time just being like, do I like Brad? Am I in love with Brad Pitt? Am I in love with him? Is that a thing?
So weirdly,
Apparently
he's a
it
guy I don't feel has a hubris movie, really.
Brad Pitt?
Yeah. Because he's been kind
seems
of
to
all
be-
over the place.
He also seems to be somebody who is ego light, if such a thing exists in Hollywood, where he seems to be caring less about his ego than all the other stuff, and so he ends up preferring to just make fun of himself and just put himself out there and work with people that he thinks are interesting, whether that's a Soderbergh or a Coen brother or whatever. He's willing to just put himself out there and do something, stretch himself. And it's not about him. He's not trying to make a movie where he is the selling point. He has never really wanted to be the selling, much like a Keanu Reeves. Keanu doesn't want to be the selling point. He wants to be the story to be the selling point, you know? Which is why I think Keanu Reeves, somebody with really mediocre acting talent, has become a mega star because he knows good stories, talented people, and he wants to work with them.
Likable. He's just a likable person.
He is able to overcome his shortcomings as a performer because it's not about his ego. If he got wrapped up in making ego movies, he would be an absolute failure as a star. He could not do what Tom Cruise does. He couldn't. It would not work. It would fall. The whole house of cards would fall.
Tom Cruise has got such a long career at this point, and
I think all of his movies are ego movies, and all of them are blank check movies now. Ultimately, it feels like since Top Gun, he's been on a blank check run. Tom Cruise basically is able to say, even despite disastrous results, he is able to flip it back around and be on top again and write his own check for movies. It's wild. His journey is fascinating, and I'm an apologist for him. I generally like Tom Cruise. I think Tom Cruise makes really good movies. I don't particularly care for his faith and the ways in which that faith seems to be going about things in the world. But I do think he produces high quality product, but it's always the Tom Cruise show. He's got to be showing his muscles. He's got to be running in the streets somewhere. He's got to look tough. He's got to be strong. It's always got to be about him and making him look good. Always.
I would say Collateral might, and that and Interview with the Vampire are probably his two most offbeat movies, at least for me, because I think Interview with the Vampire in particular,
he does have moments in his career where his ego took a backseat. And I certainly think a movie like Eyes Wide Shut is an example of that. My favorite would be Tropic Thunder, is a movie where he took the backseat to his ego in a big way and basically said, hey, Ben, let me just do something different. And Ben Stiller just let him go. And I think it worked really well. I just feel like for the most part, those are the exceptions and those aren't the rule. 00711, what is going on? He said the greatest movie star of all time besides Charlie Chaplin. And I could see that. I mean, Tom Cruise is like movie stardom personified and ultimately has become a blank check actor because those checks pay. They don't bounce, right? It's super rare that he has a flop. And I'm hearing, sadly, this new Mission Impossible might be an example of a flop. Whether you want to blame it on, COVID or whatever, it did not succeed the way his Top Gun movie did last year. That was this mega huge hit. Excellent screen presence. And I do agree. Charisma. He's got charisma to the power of 10 for sure.
Well, you know why it didn't succeed? Because you didn't have No Good Comics seeing it 25 times in the theater.
That's so true. So true.
My God, between him and Carlito.
I mean, and the Two Brothers comics, it's their. I did a whole Instagram story drama with Two Brothers comics because they were saying that it's their favorite movie ever. And so I had to give them 10 other movies to see if I could find a movie that was better than Top Gun Maverick, because for them, Top Gun Maverick is the greatest movie of all time. And I'm not even willing to admit that I feel it's better than the original. I'm not even in that boat yet. Maybe one day I'll get there. I'm not there yet. So for me, that's a low bar. It's very enjoyable, very entertaining. I'm not hating on Maverick at all. It's a very good sequel, but it's a sequel.
There is a director now that they've been in the game for a while, but I think now they might have their blank check, or at least earn the right to, and that's Catherine Bigelow.
I would love if she earned that spot. I think she's always been in the Cameron shadow in a sort of tragic way. Even when she did a movie like Point Break or does a movie like Hurt Locker or Zero Dark 30, I always feel like she's someone that seems like they're hustling to get their product made and doesn't seem to be just given an opportunity. But I do agree. I wish she's somebody I wish would get her blank check. I don't know that do you feel like she's had that movie? Is Zero Dark 30 that movie?
She does. I think she's earned the right to it now after, because she's had hit after hit or critical hit. So I think she's now hit that level where she might get that passion project.
Because I mean, Zero Dark 30 didn't seem like she was just getting to do whatever she wanted.
No.
You know, after Hurt Locker, you'd think maybe she had that chance, but I think they were already making Zero Dark 30.
Her track record now is building to.
I'd like to see what would happen were she to give herself that opportunity. That would be interesting.
My favorite thing, I think it was the year Avatar came out, where they're announcing Best Picture. And James Cameron or Best Director, and James Cameron's already getting out of his chair, and they announced she won.
Yeah.
And you just see this look on his face, and I just wanted her to like go up there and be like, "I'd like to thank you, fuck you," because he cheated on her. Pretty
a tumult. He and Linda Hamilton and Catherine Bigelow, a lot of women that I think he left, tragically along the way. Was there any? You had this really epic list of categories of people. And
Very
was
much.
there any? Was there a category that we skipped, or are there any that we haven't gotten to yet?
There is an animator who I think probably has a blank check.
Yeah, was this a Japanese? Oh, sorry,
no, Brad Bird.
You think so?
The Incredibles, yeah.
I mean, obviously he got to make his sequel to The Incredibles, and maybe that was his blank check movie because it didn't work as well as the original. It didn't.
No, but if you look at his
and it was
record
longer.
of movies, yeah.
Or maybe it was John. Didn't he do John Carter of Mars? Was that Andrew Stanton?
That was him, was it?
I can't remember. It was one of the Pixar guys. Maybe it was Stanton.
It might have been,
I was assuming you meant Miyazaki, who seems
to also
be at a place where he gets whatever he wants.
He's also incredibly
He's the
picky.
Disney of Japan. I mean, seems to get what he wants.
Yeah, Brad Bird, probably The Incredibles might have been his blank check.
The second one?
The first one.
The first one was his blank check.
The Iron Giant and Ratatouille, I think, got him.
Yeah, that's fair.
And for anybody, like, Iron Giant is...
So who did awesome. The John Carpenter of Mars? Do you know? John Carter of Mars, sorry. Was it Stanton? It was one of those Pixar guys. I'm worried. Maybe it wasn't Bird.
I don't think it was him. I remember. So that famously troubled production on that.
Yeah. Tragic.
I hope it's John Smithy. Andrew Stanton.
It was Stanton, okay, because he did Finding Nemo, and then he went over to do live action. So that was the movie he picked.
So Brad Bird got to, after that, do Mission Impossible: Ghost Protocol.
He did, yeah,
and then did Tomorrowland,
which is a really good movie. And then he did what?
Tomorrowland.
Oh, that was see that might have been his blank check movie. I don't know. Ponderous.
That was fucking
overlong.
That is the Passion Disney movie.
Maybe it's his one. I don't know.
You're right though. Ghost Protocol was the underrated of the Mission Impossibles.
For me, that run from three by was it not Abrams? J.J. Abrams. From J.J. on, I feel like they've been really on a streak of quality mission movies.
J.J. Abrams, I can't say because he's very good at studio notes, and that's why he keeps getting jobs.
You think so?
Yes, I'd say the 8mm or not 8mm. What was Super 8 was probably
Super 8,
his.
Yeah,
I think that was probably his biggest passion project movie. Tim Burton.
Now, Tim is a very interesting example because he's definitely somebody that has had time and again been given these epic budgets and a lot of freedom. What would you qualify as his blank check movie? I mean, obviously you think it's Ed Wood?
Ed Wood or Mars Attacks?
That seems more like it to me. Mars Attacks. Yeah, maybe it was Mars. I mean, it's hard because he's probably had it. He's a guy who may have had several. Had a hit, been given another blank check, and then, struggled, that kind of thing. He's an unusual case, that Tim Burton.
You end up with also people like Soderbergh, who's just constantly, consistently good.
Yeah. And
where I don't know if he has a blank check movie, really.
I would argue Ocean's 12 might have been a blank check movie for him.
Oh, fuck, I forgot about that. Shit.
I think he'd had this huge hit with 11, and then it was like all the stars wanted their paydays, and so 12 and 13 were kind of a response probably to what happened.
And then Fincher. There's a big one.
I mean, after 7, what did we get? What was his next one?
It wasn't Zodiac. Shit.
No, there was some. Was it Fight Club? It might have been Fight Club.
I think Alien 3, then Fight Club.
No, it was Alien 3, then 7, then
Alien 3, 7, The Game.
The Game.
I forgot about that.
What was after Panic Room? Look at that run of hits, though.
Zodiac, wow. And then this next one might be his blank check movie. Curious Case of Benjamin Button.
Yeah. And I really like that movie. I like that movie a lot.
Because it was that and the social network back to back.
Mm-hmm. He's an interesting case because maybe he has been given his blank check movie and he's done it well enough that it wasn't a disaster. He was able to overcome it,
Yeah, I mean, didn't Benjamin Button get an award?
It got some Oscar nominations for sure. I really like it. I like Benjamin Button.
Oh no, it's good. It's just if you look at his other movies,
by comparison, it stands down a step.
Danny Boyle's another one who's had some very interesting movies.
But he's an interesting case too, because I think much like Spielberg, he's somebody that seems to put hurdles in his way and test himself, like Soderbergh as well, where they're like, I'm going to make this movie digitally. I'm going to try this new technology. I'm going to make this movie with animation that I've never tried before. I'm going to make this with no-name actors. I'm going to make this in a foreign country with like no-name famous actors in it. I think they are Soderbergh, Spielberg, and Boyle are people who are more interested in creative challenges than they are in their ego of being famous or whatever. You know what I mean?
Trainspotting 2 might be, in my opinion, his blank check movie.
But look how long it took him to make it. He didn't try to make it right away. It was almost like the studio begging him to make this movie. It was not his ego trip that drove him to it. It was everybody else, right? Johnny Lee Miller and Ewan McGregor, and everybody dragging him back to this. Like
he also was involved in a very, very disastrous film, The Beach.
You know what? That might have been it. Maybe that was the
They went to
tough
film
pill
in
to
Thailand,
swallow.
and the typhoon broke out and flooded everything.
and
People almost died.
just after Titanic, and he's got to try to make this movie, and it just becomes this complete disaster.
But
maybe he learned some things.
Follows up with 28 Days Later, everything filmed on Sony Handycams.
Uh-huh.
You will never find a 4K version of it.
And an ego-free actor at the lead, when somebody Cillian Murphy, who's just there to create something interesting.
Ray Winstone, I think, was the biggest actor on that set.
I wouldn't be surprised.
And then that was followed by Millions, a favorite sci-fi movie of mine, Sunshine.
Mm-hmm.
Which
more Cillian Murphy, right?
Yep. And also Chris Evans, pre everything.
Right.
Then he follows that up with 28 Weeks Later.
Right.
And Slumdog Millionaire, which is probably his most his
highest accolades, right?
127 hours following that.
Did he direct all three of those films, the sequels to 28 Days?
28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later. There is no third one yet.
Oh, okay.
Steve Jobs, that movie he did.
Did he direct that from the script by Sorkin?
Yes.
Interesting question here from Gore. What about David O. Russell? I remember him publicizing Silver Linings Playbooks as a film about mental health. Unfortunately, Cooper's character came across as a jerk instead of a guy with mental health issues.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I know that he had, Three Kings, and then what was the one with Mark Wahlberg? Huckabees. I Heart Huckabees.
Oh, fuck that movie.
I think a Huckabees could be an example of him basically writing his own check on something. I know that there was rumors that Clooney punched him out on Three Kings for talking rudely to the extras.
American Hustle,
which I think is on I think there's most filmmakers seem to have this blank check moment, and then it's how they do after it that's the question. And I think that seems to be on the downside after his blank check, right?
He executive produced Anchorman.
Really? I did not know that.
Neither did I. So, American Hustle, Silver Linings Playbook, The Fighter. Great movie, which probably is another one that Mark Wahlberg might have tried to take a swing at him on.
Yeah, because he's worked with Wahlberg a few times now.
Three Kings, Flirting with Disaster, Spanking the Monkey.
Those are his early hits, his indies.
Yeah. I remember Three Kings very vividly, though, because I just remember the actors all looked pissed off.
Yes. All the way through.
Yes.
But the movie works. I like Three Kings.
It was okay. I didn't love it.
Spike Jonze.
Yes, Spike Jonze was another one. I would never say that she has a blank check, but I think she earned it. Sofia Coppola, at least as an indie darling, she's put out some very good ones.
She did that Marie Antoinette movie that I haven't seen.
Yes.
It seemed like she was writing her own check on that one.
You know what? You might be right. Paul Verhoeven.
Oh, geez. That's a good example, because clearly he's a guy with RoboCop and Total Recall who basically was in a place and Basic Instinct, right, to do whatever he wanted. And I think you ended up getting some really disastrous results. It wasn't striptease. Well, not striptease.
Starship Troopers.
Showgirls.
No, that wasn't him.
That wasn't him.
Showgirls. I don't think it was. There is a Spielberg. Actually, there is a blank check movie.
Oh, I'd love to hear it.
I forgot all about it. Catch Me If You Can.
You think so?
Look at his filmography.
That one doesn't really seem to stand out.
Fit like the others.
It doesn't seem to stand out to me the same way. I don't know. Interesting. I would put Amistad ahead of that. That's interesting.
Oh. You mean like George Lucas with Red Tails?
Michael Bay is like,
he is a walking blank check.
With blank check. I mean, obviously anything in the Transformers era, right? That's a great one, Gore. That's a great one.
So I've got one that could go a couple of different ways, but Zack Snyder, he cashed in the Dawn
Yes.
of the Dead remake that him and James Gunn did, and for some reason, Legendary's like, here's a shitload of money, make whatever you want. And he brought out Sucker Punch.
Yeah, I took that as his like after his post 300.
Okay, that was his third movie then. Yeah, so it's 300.
With 300
then
and Dawn of the Dead, he definitely was in a place where he could do what he wanted, and that's a prime example of a filmmaker with an insane ego creating a massively inferior product. And it was, for me, one of the earliest times when I realized how a trailer can be massively deceiving. Because I saw the trailer for Sucker Punch, and I was like, this is going to be cool. It looked like the trailer for
it looked
City or
interesting.
300. And that movie was so disappointing. It generally reminded me that I had to be super wary of trailers. Verhoeven made an excellent film a few years ago called Elle, says Gore, with Isabelle Huppert.
If a movie opens, middles, and closes with rape, I don't need that movie.
Jeez. Is that the specific qualifier?
That was Sucker Punch.
Yeah, I know.
And we get after that. Warner Brothers like, fuck it, let's give him Man of Steel.
That's a shocking turn of events for me. The fact that he then got a massive, huge superhero movie to do as a follow-up to Sucker Punch. And I mean, maybe they just saw the trailers and they saw the view of it and they were like, let's do it.
And then it's not well received. Hey, Puff.
What's up, Sean? If you guys aren't following Puff and you want more movie content, clearly you're here hanging out listening to Movie Talk. Sean and Thorsten Varangian Vigilante, they're together almost every Friday talking movies. They did Last Boy Scout recently. They had some shocking comments about LA Confidential that scarred me to my core. Both of them basically disappointed in the movie. VV saying it was legitimately a movie that he did not like, that was not for him, and that he had several problems with it.
I never see VV's posts anymore.
He's mostly just on YouTube with Sean, or sometimes on other channels as well.
I need to check in on him and make sure he's okay.
I'm not. Oh, he's doing well.
No. I'm talking about with that hot take. I got it.
Yes. I don't want to like shame, because obviously it's his opinion. You can have any opinion about any movie. I've never heard that opinion concerning LA Confidential, and it blew my mind. It made me want to revisit it and really question my opinion on it because he was so that way. Sean says, I wasn't disappointed, still enjoyed it very much. Okay, good. I'm glad at least somebody came out of it feeling better.
Because I remember when they did their Carpenter retrospective, they had a couple of hot takes, but I didn't necessarily disagree with them because Carpenter is kind of all over the place with it.
Well, and VV and I have very different taste in movies, and what we look for in movies were very, very different. So it's not uncommon for Varangian and I to disagree. He was very upset when I counted down my favorite action movies, and I didn't include Commando, and I didn't include much
Last Action Hero.
Yeah, not much from the Arnold list. So that I've yet to win back his approval on anything. Who Dat was there last night. Hoo-yah! And I've got my books from last night. Even though they didn't win every round that they were in, I still got them up here behind me. But you can count on me being back. The king will be back to hold on to his crown Friday night. Be ready.
So I got to go on the Zack Snyder tear here. So after Man of Steel disappoints, they go ahead and give him more money and give him all the pieces to play with to do BVS.
Yeah.
Like, it's like a kid who gets a bunch of action figures like, look. Which,
I mean, that's kind of true.
I'll add in the director's cut is Carlito approved.
Right.
I just had to throw that because We have a whole sub chat that is dedicated to Carlito's hot take.
It is. Yeah. So there's a group of us, Bearded, Fire Guy Ryan, Dan and I, and Carlito, and we have a little group of movie chat group here over on Instagram, and it's called BVS is better than, what did he
Batman
say?
Forever.
Batman Forever. It's still a stunning hot take from Carlito. So mind blowing for sure. So Gore, I tried to go back and remember what I picked. It's been a little while. I know that Die Hard was, if not number one, was right there. I know that Raiders of the Lost Ark was right there. I'm sure Raiders and Die Hard were like 1 and 2. I'm not sure where I placed them. I know that Gore was. I know that VV was upset that I included Beverly Hills Cop. As a kid, for me, Beverly Hills Cop was one of my favorite action movies I could watch over and over again. And VV's like, that's a comedy. It's not an action movie. You can't count it. So he was upset with me.
It's Bloodsport.
Bloodsport. I did not have a lot of the muscle men era action.
Predator.
Movies. I don't know that I had any Arnold movies on the list. And again, I think to this day, Thorsten hasn't forgiven me.
Were you being a plebe and didn't have Cobra?
I did not. Yeah. Again, the muscle men era of action from the late 80s, early 90s is not most of my jam.
I prefer Aliens an action movie.
Early 80s. So I disqualified some sci-fi movies like Aliens. Looking back, Aliens might be an addition. I've now watched it a few times. It is just a stellar action movie. But Die Hard and Raiders were definitely the top 2. I can't remember. And I know I had Beverly Hills Cop, I think, was number 5. I can't remember what the other 2 were. I'd have to go back and find my list.
So Rambo is one of those ones I put up there just because.
As far as a great action movie.
The best part of acting that Stallone does in that movie is when he starts crying at the end.
I mean, it's a tough scene.
Also, he's like,
I don't have my phone. I don't know where I put it.
I didn't ask you. You asked me. Yeah. You wouldn't let us win. I come back to the world. I could drive a tank when I was overseas. Now I can't even throw out garbage. And I mean, it
does. So are you saying that the scene doesn't work for you?
No, it works for me. Like, honestly, it's the best bit of acting that he had done.
Gotcha.
Outside of Rocky, because like he starts crying, he's showing true emotion. And back then, remember, tough guys didn't cry.
Big boys don't cry. Oh, I think I had a Mad Max movie in there, Gore. I can't remember if I used Road Warrior or Fury Warriors. Road Warrior and Fury Road for me are tied. Like, I couldn't believe that he made a movie worthy of Road Warrior, but Fury Road for me on rewatch might be a better action movie. Might be.
I remember George Miller almost had that Justice League movie at one point.
I'm trying to find my list. I usually keep it in like a spot on my phone, but I don't think I kept it. I must have gotten rid of it. Sorry, Gore. I guess you'd have to rewatch it on replay or something.
Francis Ford Coppola. He has one movie in particular.
Let me see if I can think of it. Was it Jack?
Yes.
Yes.
And Barry Levinson has a big one also.
I feel good about that. I would agree with that. I do have a very soft spot for Francis Ford Coppola, and I would be tempted to call his blank check movie Godfather 3.
You wouldn't be wrong.
And you know that might upset some folks, but I would be tempted that by the time he had won 2 Oscars for back-to-back movies like that, and got the chance to make the 3rd one, I would be shocked if anybody said no to him when he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna have my daughter play this part." And nobody was like, "Hey, Francis, can we maybe suggest picking somebody else?" And nobody said no. Nobody said no to him.
Robert Zemeckis? This was a guy who had hit after hit.
I mean, he really did. He really did. Did he have? The question is, did he have a bomb? And are we equating
his bomb? His bomb was early on.
But are we equating having a bomb with being a blank check? Because it's not necessarily the same, right?
So there is a giant bomb in his career.
A giant bomb in his career. Is it the Beowulf movie?
No.
Is it because he got into that animation phase where he was just making those digital animation motion
No,
capture
but it's
movies?
close because Polar Express was polarizing.
Yeah, because I know people that love Polar Express that are way into it.
So there's 3 in a row after Forrest Gump. He in '96 followed up Forrest Gump with Bordello of Blood.
Wait a
the
second.
Tales from the Crypt movie.
He
Yep.
directed Bordello of Blood?
Oh, pardon me. He wrote the story.
Okay, no, that's
Contact was his follow-up.
Okay. Which I could see that being his blank check movie because it did seem to get away with a lot of stuff, including horrible chemistry between your leading actors.
What Lies Beneath and Castaway were the other. Castaway could very well be his blank check.
It could have been, but I feel like those movies are both, they work despite that. But I would argue
Polar
maybe
Express,
Contact,
though, Contact. Oof.
As I will say, What Lies Beneath is as close as a filmmaker I think has ever come to recreating a Hitchcock film. I think people, if you watch it knowing that Zemeckis is trying to make his version of a Hitchcock movie, What Lies Beneath is a masterpiece. I mean, there's a shot, and I think it goes something like this. She's driving to get away in the car with the trailer with the boat, and the camera zooms in on her face in the rearview mirror, then pans over to the rearview mirror, and then goes inside the rearview mirror, where you're now traveling along the side of the car through the lens of the rearview mirror, just in time to see Harrison Ford's foot climbing into the back of the boat under the tarp. The shot is so buck wild. It's like a Hitchcock shooting from beneath the table kind of shot. It's wild. It's such a great. I need to rewatch that movie.
John Singleton, Boys in the Hood, first movie.
Yeah, I mean, Higher
Poetic
Learning.
Justice, Higher Learning.
Yeah,
this
Higher
is what
Learning
I think
is probably his blank check.
Nope, I think I have one better.
You do? Go ahead.
The Samuel L. Jackson Shaft.
Oh, frig! You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
Although Higher Learning is a disaster, it does not work.
Very much so.
Wow, that is a great call.
You'd
think you'd be making just pure money putting Samuel L. Jackson in the role of John Shaft and just remaking like those basic comments right there. I'm going to take Sam Jackson and I'm going to remake Shaft. You're printing money at that point, but they basically it wasn't a bomb, but they did not make a good movie.
Would Michael Mann's be Last of the Mohicans?
I don't know. I don't know that Michael Mann ever.
Or be Miami Vice.
I mean, that's a fair one. I don't know that he ever had a big enough success to be given a blank check, but I do know that the success of Heat and the intellectual property of Miami Vice might have been the perfect storm to allow him to do stupid stuff. But I think that's also an example of actors' egos getting in the way, because I don't know that that's Michael Mann at fault as a blank check filmmaker so much as it is, Colin Farrell being an alcoholic doing cocaine and Jamie Foxx thinking that the movie was all about him and everybody trying to make a different movie. So Jamie's making his movie and Colin's making his movie and Michael Mann's trying to make it work. So for me, that feels just like ego run amok on a set and doesn't necessarily feel like a blank check, but maybe I'm wrong.
Rob Zombie is another one where they just kept handing him money,
which I don't get because I've never liked anything he's ever made.
So
then maybe that's a hot take. I don't think Rob Zombie makes anything worth time. I don't want to see anything.
I think behind the camera, he's not bad.
His like a cinematography.
Yes, he needs to let someone else write. He needs also a no man on set to be like, listen, you don't look at the script, you don't touch the script, you just fucking shoot it. Don't put your fucking wife in the movie.
Which I heard Tim Burton say something similar where he's like, I wouldn't know a good screenplay if it sat on my face. Like he admits like screenwriting and screen story is not his thing. Cinematography and storytelling visually is his thing. So he is masterful when he gets a special story to tell. But when he gets a mediocre story to tell, he can't do anything with it.
Rob Zombie seems to want to make Texas Chainsaw Massacre and just hasn't been given the rights to it.
So
what he did to Halloween, and
right.
apparently, like, he called John Carpenter, this is the story, and he said it many times, like, yeah, I called John. I said, hey, I'm going to remake your movie. And John just said, make it your own. And then goes and basically changes some things, put hillbilly white trash in the beginning, makes an origin. And there's been some conventions where people in a Q&A ask John Carpenter what he thinks. And he said, basically, listen, I love when people remake my stuff because I just hold out my hand and a check floats into it.
I mean, that's a good way to live.
I'd rather sit home and smoke pot and play video games. But he said, I hated what Rob did. He took away what made the movie work. It's about suspense, not hyper violence, and nobody seems to understand it.
I mean,
and then Rob Zombie puts out the Halloween 2. For some reason, like, the Weinsteins are like, do whatever the fuck you want. The other one made some money, and he sure as fuck did. It makes no sense. Malcolm McDowell's trash in it. Like, it's just terrible. That is my example. And then he makes the Munsters, of all the fucking things in the world to remake. That's my long-winded way of leading into Guy Ritchie.
Oh, geez. Are we going there?
Swept Away.
Yeah, that's fair.
And that's because it put his wife in it.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm trying to find my list of like of action movies. I'm just struggling to find it. So I feel bad for Gore and for Vivi. My mistake. My bad here.
David Gordon Green following up. I love this. Follows up Pineapple Express with Your Highness.
Okay.
Terrible. Dan Aykroyd, high on cocaine, does nothing but trouble.
Yes. I mean, that it's, I think, so here's what I would say to this as a general rule. Oftentimes, sequels to hugely successful comedy movies are ripe for this problem, right? So you talk about Analyze That. You talk about Ghostbusters 2. You talk about Fierce Creatures, the sequel or follow-up to A Fish Called Wanda. I think what you end up with is a lot of movies that are supremely flawed at their core, and that everybody's just hoping that comedically talented performers will just do something on that day that's funny.
I think that's the thing.
It's not designed for a comedy. It doesn't work like that. Zoolander 2. Let's throw Zoolander 2 into the mix. So those are examples, I think, of a studio writing a check. They're saying, "Hey, Zoolander was great," or "Analyze This was hilarious. Here's a blank check. Everybody gets paid extra money. Go make your comedy." And then it comes back, and you're like, "How did I get a whole 10 yards? I wanted a whole 9 yards part 2, and I got a whole 10 yards. What is this?"
I think that's the genius of Mel Brooks. He always teased the sequel, but never made them.
Right. Yes. But then even his, obviously, like, comedies tapered off in quality. I mean, you can't obviously sustain. I mean, how many satires get nominated for Best Original or Best Adapted Screenplay at the Oscars? Like, it just doesn't happen. But Young Frankenstein did.
Spaceballs 2, The Search for More Money. A History of the World Part 3.
Oof. Yeah.
Which I heard is actually happening.
Gore, what I'm going to do, and you can check back later, is when I find the video where we count down our 5 favorite action movies, I'm going to put the link to it in the description for this video. So it'll always be down below. And people who are watching are like, "Man, I wish I could see the list." Like, you can later, when you're done listening to Dan and I talk about blank check movies, you can click the description, go down and tap it. Which reminds me of something, Dan. We are clearly drinking tonight because we did not do what we had set out to do from the beginning.
I only had 1 beer. I got to go to work in the morning.
Yeah. So I'll put it on me. part of the reason we wanted to make sure we did a show tonight, because Dan and I have an awesome friend named Jennifer who has a GoFundMe. So for those of you like Gore who are listening now or watching on the replay, Jennifer's GoFundMe is about supporting her with her cancer treatments. If you're missing Jennifer from Comic Books Will Break Your Heart or Comics Will Break Your Heart, depending on where you follow her, the link to her GoFundMe is in the description of this video. Excuse me. She's an awesome person, an amazing community member, and going through something we wouldn't wish on our worst enemy. And of course, dealing with the financial stress that comes with it because we're Americans and we don't know how to do a healthcare system. So she needs some support from the community. She is nearly halfway to her overall goal. Her goal is $25,000 to cover all the medical stuff that she's dealing with right now,
Which
and the
probably won't
challenges with
cover all
not
of
being
it.
able to work full time because of going through chemotherapy. The link is down below. You can do two different things, and maybe even both if you really are able. Donate some money if you have it. Share it out if you cannot. Or both if you're like Dan and I and just are gluttons for supporting somebody awesome. So if you have a Facebook, an Instagram, anything, and have a chance to support somebody who is of a really high quality and deserving, please support Jennifer and donate something or donate your time and effort.
And if you want to see my rambling video where I almost start crying in it, you can see my Instagram reels because
there you go.
I posted to draw attention to it, and I started talking about all the things Jen helped me with personally over the years, and I might have started to break down during it.
You're acting like there's a reason to be ashamed of that or to be disappointed with yourself, and there's none of it. There's none of that. We've all been
no, it's the, have you ever caught yourself where you're like, God damn it, no, don't
this is
do
gonna
this.
go somewhere.
Yeah, that was more of what it was, where you catch yourself doing it and then you start like laughing at yourself because you're doing it.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's to say the least, Jen means the world to me as a friend. I love her to death.
Yeah.
And for her to be going through what she's going through hurts me deeply because there's nothing I can do. Luckily, Brian from Marvel by the Month, great guys, organized this. He's been spearheading it. He does a lot of marketing, and then having great friends like Rodney Barnes reposting it and spreading attention, which with the amount of followers he has. And Sean Lewis, who reposted on Twitter or X, he reposted it. So having bigger people, and Jen got to, I saw the picture of her with Brian Michael Bendis.
Yes, I
at
saw
Rose
that today.
City. So that was really cool. And our friend Scott was doing Swamp Thing drawings for $20 a piece.
He was, yeah. There's lots
some
of ways to
some people
support.
paid to slap Bearded.
Some people, yeah. There was one guy who was willing to pay $100 for the opportunity to slap the Bearded Comic Bro whenever they meet in person. So that's how far this thing has really gone.
Gambit did a bunch of great sketch covers that if you wanted to reach out, there's a video on my channel of what he drew and what's available. If you're a Maleficent fan or Scar from The Lion King.
Yep.
I think we did 2.5 hours almost the other night of just
you guys
all of
did
us
it. Yeah. You did.
All of us just hanging out. And for Fire Guy Ryan to stay on a stream that long, I'm not kidding. That you know how much Jen means to him, and for Bearded to come on, only son of a bitch that didn't show up was Carlito.
Yeah, or me. I don't think I made it.
But you showed up at the end.
Did I? Okay, good.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
because
I did. Yeah. I did. Now I realized. Yeah. After I paid my entry fee.
By the way, I have to mention this because I need to shame him on air. Carlito, after ignoring us, all of a sudden, this hot bartender talked about Insomnia by Nolan, and I had to go home and watch it.
Yeah.
My fingers started typing, and I was like, you know what? I'm at work. I'm not going to do this.
Walk away.
but I will shame you publicly.
As you should.
I think Greg was right. We just need to set a date, and
we're going to. He's not going to watch this, so this is what's going to happen. The next movie show is going to be focused on Guy Ritchie, but we're really going to be talking about Christopher Nolan without the guest of honor, Carlito.
Well, it could go one of two ways. If he shows up, we're talking Guy Ritchie.
Yes.
He does it. We're talking
and then
Chris
we will
Nolan.
set a date for Nolan later on.
He'll get so mad.
Nope, that's how it works. He's never going to watch this, so it doesn't matter. He doesn't watch my channel. He just shows up on my channel when I invite him sometimes.
But I feel like we need to have Sean on for one of these shows.
We do. It's been a while since I've hung out with Sean. I think if we get a director or a topic that is in his wheelhouse, we'll have to invite him on. Maybe but we need to get out of here because I know you got to work tomorrow, and I got kids coming home from a team dinner. So,
not the dreaded team dinner. I remember ours was always spaghetti.
Really it was pizza, so a different Italian deal. But yeah. Did you have anything coming up though that you obviously we plugged Jen, but was there other stuff that you wanted to mention?
Whatever you do in your personal time, I didn't plug her.
I'm just saying. I'm down.
So I believe next Saturday, after I get my COVID vaccine shot and flu shot the same day, I will be guesting on my co-host Tessa on her channel is doing a 10.5-hour claim sale.
Way. Wow.
And portions of the proceeds are going to Jen.
Nice. And she's got amazing books through her shop.
So, because I was like, yeah, sure, I'll be on. She's like, it's 10.5 hours. I was like, I'll be on for 2.5.
Give me a fifth of the total. And I'll go for
but yeah, she has great books. Her pricing is pretty good, and her grades usually are pretty accurate.
Very spot on. Yeah.
And again, this is between her and Bueller.
Yep.
Is a really great thing. I don't know Bueller that well. I like know him in the community, but I've never really hung out or communicated with him. But my respect for him is mighty for doing what he's doing. I saw Comic Man Andy talking her up on his show. Again, I've barely run into him.
And Gary B, the casual comic guy, did a whole video on Jen, dropping her link to him on his channel.
Yes, and Melanin and Manga in Sheena yesterday.
Yep.
And Sheena, early fan of Jen and I when we were doing the show on this channel.
Absolutely.
Always supportive. The show of love for Jen means a lot. I could talk about Jen forever just because she's my friendo.
She's because she's awesome and she's supportive and she's knowledgeable and she's helpful and she's just the best stuff we want in our community. And we don't want her to in any way have to be burdened with this challenge that she's destroying, this beast in her own body that she's defeating. So if we can support her by just dropping a link or donating a small amount, then that's the best thing we can be doing.
And for anybody who self-publishes books, if you've pushed your Kickstarter on Instagram, I guarantee you she's probably put money to support or back. I know she backs a shitload of projects on there. And I started doing funny everyday stuff for her campaign. I had Buffalo Bill saying, "Did you donate?
Oh my God.
Did you donate?"
That's the one that got me.
So that one got her, but I did the Hellraiser one where if you donate,
I saw that one.
Such things to show you. Today I got kind of burdened at work because we're pulling everything down to set up for Christmas on Monday. We've hit that.
Good God. Monday?
Yep.
It's not October on Monday. Jeez.
So we've got Halloween on one side of the building, and then we'll have Christmas on the other side. And I told one of the employees, I was like, "Are you going to hang over here for the booze, or are you going to be over there for the hose?"
Oh my God.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be here all night. No, I won't.
we're gonna get out of here. So don't expect us to be gone for long. We will definitely have more movie talk, and as we're getting the goal of getting Jen to her GoFundMe max, definitely we'll hear more from us and drop that link more often.
Yeah, and definitely like it's in the description. If you want to go over to my channel and check out the like ponderous live stream we did where I just kept every couple of minutes dropping the link in the chat because that's where I was mentally.
Yep.
I can't promise that you'll be able to donate money to slap Greg.
But you can reach out to Greg and just see. You can just ask.
I think he didn't want his wife to know about that.
It was a one and done for him, I think. But that lucky winner is really going to live it down. I'll tell you right now.
It made for a great bit of reels being made.
Right.
Thank you, everybody. Like I said, we don't really put a whole lot of thought into these when we do them. With one-offs like this, it's kind of, all right, well, I'm available this
I
day.
think we put I like to think we put a little conversation in behind the scenes, and definitely we're well versed enough to really have a fun time just rambling on these movies. So
October, the plan is that Celluloid and Scotch will be back for a couple of weeks.
Nice.
I can't really bank on Carlito any week, but
you can bank on me.
I just got The Exorcist 4K 50th anniversary disc. So I'm pretty stoked to rewatch that.
Nice.
I think The Descent is on my chart of movies to watch for October, which for anybody who hasn't watched The Descent, if you have problems with tight spaces or claustrophobia, this movie will make you feel it.
Yep, that's one of those. I usually struggle watching Halloween movies during October. I'm one of the guys that would rather watch them in December. Maybe it's a psychological flaw in me.
Weirdly, I already picked out my Christmas movie this year to watch.
Which is?
That Violent Night movie from last year, because I bought the disc and never watched it.
Oh, wow.
David Harbour.
Yeah.
Although there's one movie I think I would love to do with you and your daughters.
Uh-huh.
It is a Christmas zombie movie and it's a musical.
A Christmas zombie musical called
Anna and the Apocalypse.
I don't even know that I've ever seen this one.
It is very teen centric. It's British. So it's got like a little bit of cheeky Shaun of the Dead humor, but
sure.
I'll send you the trailer later because I sat there and I'm like, it's a musical. It's wow.
All right. I'm going to get us out of here, gang. Yeah. I appreciate those of you like Gore who's sticking with us all the way to the end. Try not to watch any Halloween film again. I respect it. You really just need the first one. That's all you need. That's all you need, buddy.
And the Busta Rhymes one.
Oh, jeez. All right, everybody. Good night. Thank you for hanging, and thank you for supporting Jen and clicking the link.